You're listening to Surgical Radio Podcast, episode number 157, with your host, Joey the Moose. Alrighty, welcome everyone back to my podcast. I'm Joey the Moose, and this is Surgical Radio Podcast. Today we've got an interesting subject going on. We will be talking about laparoscopy surgeries, and this one is close to my heart. I actually had a laparoscopic cholecystectomy about 10 years ago, and it was one of those things where, like, I didn't want the surgery. I was I was scared, and let me get a little vulnerable here. There was fear. There were things going into it, and I was worried about the anesthesia. I was worried about, going under the knife, as they say. And, so, let's actually, let's go back. Let's talk about, your gallbladder and, the type of things that could happen here. The way it started, and, I was quite a bit overweight. I hadn't been taking care of myself. I hadn't been eating correctly. And not to say that was the cause of the gallstones, but it definitely, probably, more likely than not, didn't help. Didn't help with it all, right? So what happened was, I started to get these attacks of pain, and I didn't know what triggered them, and I didn't know, I didn't know why they were happening to me, especially when it would usually be caused or onset by food, certain things we would eat. And I was eating with my family. There was no one else having any issues. It was only me. And, I was relatively young to be, having these type of pains. And I can remember the first time I ever had an attack. We had just had a dinner. It was a traditional Mexican dinner my mother cooked for us. And, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. We had some fried beans. We had some arroz con pollo. It was, something that I had had many times. I remember eating, and I remember getting this pain. And for a lot of you that don't know, or maybe you didn't have any experience at all with this, you can have gallstones and have no pain. In fact, you might have some now. You might have gallstones sitting right in your gallbladder and not have a single symptom. And you might have one. And it's just giving you a hard time. I got this pain, and it was in a weird spot. It was around my sternum area. I remember later on thinking back and saying it was like a diamond of pain. I can remember drawing it on my chest, or holding my hands together, like thumbs and forefingers together, and creating like a diamond right where my just below my sternum. And I don't know why. There are people that will receive pain in other parts of their bodies, but most of the time it is near your side, near your liver, and it's a radiating pain from there. I just remember having like it felt like the worst cramp. Like something was squeezing down really hard. And I remember it was uncomfortable. It was hard to breathe. I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk. And I just remember being completely taken out by this pain. And I remember there was a moment where my mom looked at me and she asked if I was okay. She was like, "Mijo, oh no, what's going on?" And I was like, "Hey, I don't know. It hurts," and I was scared. And she saw my pain and she panicked and she called 911, and the paramedics came. And I remember by the time they got there, like I couldn't process anything. I couldn't even answer their questions. When they came, they had to they'd ask my mom what was going on. They had asked her my age. They'd ask if I had any prior symptoms. And then when they asked where we wanted to go, I remember her sending me to there was a certain hospital that was known to be like the quote the heart hospital, because she was sure I was having a heart attack. She was positive. This is it. Her son is having a heart attack. He needs to go to the best heart hospital. And so the paramedics picked me up. They put me in their ambulance, put me on the stretcher, put me in the ambulance, and we went for a ride. And at this time I was probably about 20 or 25 minutes away from that hospital. It was a long ride. And there's a road from my house to get to the freeway. It's a long stretch of road, and it's pretty bumpy. It's one of those things where you gotta hit a few bumps to get there. And I remember hitting a few bumps, and it felt like there was something letting loose inside, something that was trying to get out. And I remember telling the ambulance, I need to sit up right now. And they unstrapped the top strap. I sat up and I let out one of the biggest belches of my life. It was a huge burp and I felt fantastic. I was like, oh yeah. And then everything was okay. And I remember being so embarrassed. I was like, was this just gas? Was I experiencing just gas and I just needed to belch and let it out? And by this time we're already halfway to the hospital, the heart hospital that my mom wanted me to get to. So I told the paramedic, because they wanted to know, what do you want to do? And I said, I guess let's keep going, right? So I get to the hospital and they run all the tests. They're showing that there are no proteins in my blood. There's no signs of heart attack. There is nothing wrong with me. I am healthy. And they couldn't explain it. And to follow with my primary doctor, of course. So that's what I did. That was the plan. I followed up with the doctor. The doctor also had no idea what it was, but he was going to send me for an ultrasound. Nothing came from the ultrasound. We got a CT scan because of the ongoing pain in my stomach area. No results from the CT. And then it was just a game of, what can I eat? How do I avoid this pain? And it was pretty awful. I remember for the next year of my life, I cut out any fast food. There was none. I couldn't eat any. I cut out all sodas. It was kind of, it was a long shot, but I just stopped drinking sodas. Mostly because the sodas came with the fast food. And so I don't know which one triggered it, but I knew I couldn't have. So I stopped drinking sodas, stopped eating fast food. Almost every meal was a home cooked meal, and I had to know what was in it. I ended up getting very familiar with ground beef and cabbage with a little bit of salt and pepper, and that was it. And that was my go-to meal for almost everything. Ground beef and cabbage, and I just knew that I could eat that, and it didn't give me any kind of an attack. So I went with it. After about a year, I ended up losing 100 pounds. And it was pretty remarkable thinking, because all I did was cut out the fast food, the soda, and other certain things. I was surprised. Like, I couldn't eat salad. I would eat salad, and any salad I would eat had to have ranch dressing. And if it didn't have ranch dressing, it wasn't a salad. And I don't know, later on I figured out it was the ranch dressing that would cause one of my attacks. But I didn't know that. I just knew salads scared me. And living in fear for an entire year and without ever knowing what was going on, it was a horrible experience. And I remember KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, had just come out with the Kentucky Grilled Chicken. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, finally, something healthy, right? Something healthy that I could get from a fast food joint. Grilled chicken. This is going to be fantastic for me. Something I can have, I can mix in with my normal meals. And I remember getting the Kentucky Grilled Chicken. And that night, I remember having one of the worst attacks I've ever had. It was the second time I ever had gone to the emergency room. Didn't call 911 this time because it was a familiar pain. And by this time I had learned to manage it. I had learned to take Tylenol. I'd learned to basically sleep it off. Like, if I could get into a comfortable position and just sleep, by the time I woke up, the pain was usually gone. Otherwise, it would last hours. It would last at least an hour, sometimes multiple hours. This one was not going away. This one hurt. I couldn't sleep. I got a ride to the hospital, and I remember them giving me pain meds. I felt great. They took me in for an ultrasound, and I remember that day. That day was one of the best days I've ever had, because the ultrasound tech turned me on my side and asked me, "Did anyone ever tell you have gallstones?" And I remember looking at the ultrasound tech and saying, "No, like, I don't know what gallstones are. I've never heard of gallstones." And he said, "Yeah." And then he started to almost like play the drum on my back. It was almost like a, on my back. And he was like, "Oh yeah, they're jumping around everywhere in there. You've got a lot." Now, I don't know why that ultrasound tech was able to find something. It probably has to do with the major weight loss that I'd had. Maybe things were a little bit easier to see. Maybe the ultrasound was easier to, penetrate. But I just remember having this relief of, oh my gosh, I finally know what's going on. And within a week, I was meeting with my primary doctor, who had me scheduled to meet a surgeon who scheduled the surgery. And I just remember, like, this is finally going to be it. Like, this pain is finally going to be gone. Now, I was scared, of the surgery, and I didn't want to do it. But the doctor was pretty upfront with the way it goes, the way it works. And I remember him giving me a printout. Let me see if I can find it here. It was kind of like the surgery steps and like how a laparoscopic cholecystectomy works. He explained to me what laparoscopic is and how you go in with these trocars and they fill you up with CO2 gas and they let you see. He scheduled me for, it was like a month out, and he just said, just keep doing what you're doing, keep losing weight. He said the old way would be an open surgery and I'd get a massive scar across the side of my stomach. He said the more weight you lose, the better we can see, the better we can make sure it's a laparoscopic surgery. And you go in there with the small holes, the small incisions that are made, 4 small incisions. Fill you up your stomach with CO2 so they can see, and then they use your laparoscopic tools, and they can go in there and they can remove the gallbladder, and that's it. And he said, some people you have to blast the gallstones. You can hit them with different things, lasers and ultrasounds and ultrasonic sound things. There's ways to break up the stones. He said, but once you start making gallstones, you'll always make gallstones. And so I said, yeah, let's go that way. Let's do that route. And I've got to say, it was one of the easiest setups I've ever had. Or I'm sorry, it was one of the easiest recoveries I've ever had. The small incisions healed great. I've got tiny scars where they were. I don't know. I don't know if there is a way to improve on that surgery. I don't know if there is a better way. The way that it is right now, and this is a decade ago, was perfect. The surgeon, everything was successful. And I was a big guy at the time, obviously a lot smaller than I was at the beginning of this whole thing. But when I encourage people to get this surgery, I've had coworkers with similar pains to me. I've had some asking if anybody's ever had this surgery, and I've told them my experience. I let them know some people are almost outpatient. You get the surgery and you walk right out the same day, and you can eat whatever you want. Everyone's different. Everyone recovers different. I was able to eat anything after that surgery. Unfortunately, it kind of led up to some weight gain. You know what I mean? I was able to eat the pizza, and I was able to eat, anything after that. It was great. My life was fantastic afterwards. Just knowing what was the problem, fixing the problem. I would recommend it to anyone. And, I'm just looking at my clock here. I'm going a little bit over on time. I guess, all in all I can say is, laparoscopic surgeries, they're great, and they're easy on the body. They don't cause trauma very much, little to no bruising in the healing, and you heal fast. And that's my story, and that's gonna be it for the day. You all have a great day. Enjoy any of my other episodes, and you've been listening to Surgical Radio Podcast with Joey the Moose, and I'm here. I'll be here next week. Have a great one. You've been listening to Surgical Radio Podcast. We'll see you next week.